and welcome to everyone here for the Dry Bones Army podcast. I am so excited that you're joining us today. And boy, do we have an incredible guest joining us today to educate about the truth about human trafficking and give you not only some tips and tools to protect the kids that you love and care about, but she is going to pull back the curtain and really expose the tricks and the traps of the traffickers. And I can't wait for you to meet my new friend and sister in the Lord, Heidi Chance. Heidi is a seasoned expert with 27 years on the front lines of human trafficking, a law enforcement deeply committed to the fight against human trafficking. As the founder of A Chance for Awareness, and you need to go to her website, achancephorawareness.com. There's a lot of information there that you can find about Heidi and the work she's doing. She leverages her extensive experience, real truths, and undercover operations to educate both the law enforcement community and the public. Recognized as a SME, that's a subject matter expert in human trafficking, she serves as an expert witness in trials, imparting her knowledge. Heidi offers a variety of training formats, including in-person, online, live webinars, all aimed at equipping individuals with the skills to identify and combat sex trafficking. Her mission extends beyond education. She believes in mobilizing a collective effort for eradicating sex trafficking. Heidi's work through A Chance for Awareness is a testament to her dedication to making a tangible difference in the lives of the vulnerable and empowering communities to join the fight against this horrendous crime. Now, Heidi Chance was an undercover detective. She has an extensive background in law enforcement, and she's going to share some real life experiences with us. There are traffickers who are doing over 100 years in prison because of this woman's work. And as I said, a sister in the Lord. So we're going to talk about some strategies to help you pray effectively for an end to human trafficking. And let me introduce you to my new friend, Heidi Chance. Hi, Heidi. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I'm extremely impressed with the way you articulate the need for parents to talk to their kids about human trafficking. And then you're not only telling them some of your experiences, and I do want to get into some of those real life stories that you have, where you were working to fight this crime with the Phoenix PD. But I also want to talk about the work that you're doing today to educate parents, grandparents, people who love and care for children.
Yeah. So I think what I have to offer is kind of an evolution of law enforcement evolving with how we respond to this problem. Because when I first started investigating this crime, we were just arresting prostitutes. And it was a situation where we had two squads, three squads actually, and just one allocated position for a female on each squad because the main focus was male undercover detectives targeting prostitutes. And so I've literally witnessed this evolution of now the women on the squads outweigh the men because we've changed our focus and realized our error in what we were doing, targeting victims, potential victims. And instead, now we are targeting the true participants in this crime, which are sex buyers and traffickers.
Trafficking is a business. There's a triangle, just like we learned in economics class. There's supply, product, and demand, right? And so in human trafficking, the traffickers are the suppliers. They're the ones bringing their product into the marketplace, and there's a demand being driven by the buyers. Unfortunately, in this example, the product is a person. And a lot of the time, this person that's being trafficked by that supplier, by that trafficker, or we can use a four-letter word, right? We can say pimp in this case. That's what a trafficker is. That's what a pimp is a trafficker. Let's talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk about your experience with the buyers as well. But when you start pulling back those layers and you start really talking to those individuals who are being prostituted, you start hearing their stories and you realize no little girl dreamed of being sold to strangers for sex. That's not a career path. So what kind of vulnerabilities did you see in the people who are being marketed by these pimps and traffickers.
Just to clarify, because I think a lot of people get it confused that a trafficker is different from a pimp. And you and I are on the same page, I know, but a pimp is a trafficker is a pimp. It's just another name for the same person exhibiting the same behavior, committing the same crime. And so there's some confusion about that I've seen on Instagram and TikTok and things. So clarifying that is important because they are not two different people or two different things. As far as vulnerabilities, there are many. It could be any number of things that's happening to a person during the time that they're interacting with this exploiter, and that is what a trafficker is. It could be that they lost their job. It could be that they are in a domestic violence situation with a spouse or a boyfriend and they're escaping that, and this amazing person walks in. It could be that they are a child that is upset with their parents, or one is incarcerated, or divorced parents, or they're in the child welfare system. So many different vulnerabilities. And then I've even seen it where it was a young female that was just low self esteem and the trafficker was able to exploit that vulnerability. So the vulnerability is the key, and that is what traffickers are looking for.
They're actually working like a system. And then they have this marketplace where they can sell their products, quote unquote products, the people that they are prostituting. And can you share a little bit of insight into the mentality or some of the engagement and interaction that you've had with the sex buyers that are driving the demand side of the issue?
As far as how youth are getting involved in this, is the demand is there for it. It is sex buyers asking for kids. It's sex buyers wanting younger people, and the traffickers are seeking out those youth to supply to the demand. And so it is absolutely a situation where these traffickers are looking for kids. Now, as far as buyers, the interactions I've had is there are buyers that we term as hobbyists, and they are ones that are repeat offenders. They are ones that kind of are on some kind of exciting journey to get caught. It's a repeated thing. They have forums out there where they talk about our undercover tactics. They talk about if one of them got arrested, they'll post a link to our advertisement, our phone number, describe our vehicles, describe what we look like, our moniker name we use that day, whatever they can to get the word out to other buyers, don't get caught. And it is, an uphill battle with buyers. I've had several buyers that I walked up to and I was worried that they were going to recognize me, and then they solicited sex from me again. And so it is where they aren't they're not treating people as actual human beings. I've had several victims describe being assaulted by buyers. They are there to carry out their own fantasy or their own what they're purchasing, and they don't see the other person as anything but a commodity. And they aren't worried. Who's going to call the police? You're committing a crime. I'm committing a crime. Nobody's going to call the police. So
Mm.
they feel like they can take advantage of that.
So most of these buyers are male. A lot of them are married. They're fathers, they're business owners, or they have a job that supplies a disposable income that they then take and engage in criminal activity. So what you're describing, this is actually organized criminal activity. They are working together to try to override your system of justice that you're working with law enforcement. Most people see those girls, those women, the ones being prostituted as the criminal. And the reality of the matter is that there's a system behind it. They're just being put out into the public eye, but the real criminal activity that's happening is behind the scenes, maybe through text apps, maybe through cash exchange applications or bank applications where money is being exchanged and these conversations are happening. When we're talking to the group here at the Dry Bones Army and we're trying to help them understand the reality of these criminals working together in this organized criminal activity, What are things that they can look for to identify these situations?
The community really kind of turns a blind eye, even though it's been more in the news now than ever. And it's really disheartening for law enforcement because we need community members to report things to us. We need them to, if they witness something, even though they are afraid to get involved, you can remain anonymous. You can ask for phone contact instead of a police car showing up at your house. But please call us and report these things. And in that way, we can identify these people. This crime is very transient. Uh, they're traveling from city to city, state to state. One, because they don't want to get caught by the police, but two, because they need their victims to remain dependent on them and afraid to leave. And so, and buyers, I would say, would act the same way. They also travel. They think when in Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and they think that they can order up a victim. And so it is a situation where both sides are actively working against law enforcement for real. And we can't do it alone, and we need the community to speak up, the community to recognize what's happening and where to report and know how to report. So as far as recognizing what's going on, obviously there are known areas for prostitution in most major cities. Anywhere where you have a congregation of multiple hotels, there could be prostitution activity. And so, just watching as you drive by, you may witness something. You may witness an assault. You may witness a young female that looks under 18. That's when you should report to law enforcement or a hotline of some kind, to get the word out there to get that person help. And you can, remain anonymous, like I said, and report by phone. As far as some of the other indicators, if it's someone you know personally in your life, um, if they're working at night or if they live where they work or live with the person they work for, they're constantly traveling. They don't have possession of their own identification or their phone. If you are, related to them and they are not able to call you without the other person around, or they're not able to use social media, or if it seems like they're just gone from social media, which is a disturbance in their normal behavior. Um, Multiple cell phones, even if it's got a cracked screen, if it can get on a Wi-Fi, it can still work. Hotel keys, especially a juvenile. What juvenile has hotel keys? Um, as far as physical signs, scars, bruises, we know about bruises, they change colors. So if you see a yellow bruise and a purple bruise, that's probably two different incidents of an assault. And, bruises are going to stay for a couple of days. Um, and then, of course, the branding tattoos. If you, talk to your audience about that, the branding tattoos have two purposes. One is basically this idea that we're a family, that this trafficker and each of their victims belong, this sense of belonging to the family. And then two, it's to advertise to other traffickers, these ones are mine, I own these people. And so the branding tattoos are a big indicator of, what's right in front of you.
Have you seen ways that traffickers will befriend their potential victims or even the families or the friends of that potential victim, and how they'll exploit that trust?
Yeah, I think it even starts from the perception that they're trying to portray, that they're flashy, that they have expensive, vehicles and jewelry and expensive items and name brand things. And then the whole family thinks, okay, this person actually is a success in life because they have all these amazing things that are expensive. And so if they're witnessing that, and then this individual is trying to build a relationship with their victim, which is what is part of the grooming, where they think that they're in a relationship with this person. And then, by definition, all of the other elements start to happen, like the fraud, this offer for, amazing life. You come with me, I'm going to make sure you get to beauty school. I'm going to get you a car. We're going to get your hair done, your nails done. You're going to live this amazing life. All of that, fraud. And then the coercion starts happening. And the coercion I equate to is threats. I always say, if you've listened to my prior podcast, you've probably heard me say this before, but a trafficker is the most reliable person you'll ever meet. And I say that because I've experienced conversations with traffickers as an undercover female where they're trying to recruit and groom me. And I've been threatened by a trafficker who doesn't even know who he's talking to. And the threats are very real to these victims. And, they believe that what that trafficker says will happen. And a lot of times traffickers have to show them a little bit of that happening, and that comes in the form of their assaults or threatening to hurt one of their family members. Even if they don't carry out that threat, they have the means, they have the gun, they're going to take them to the house and show them what's about to happen if you don't act, do what I say. And that is all part of that grooming process and the reason why victims aren't free to leave.
Instead of seeing it as, oh, that poor kid has had a hard life, these traffickers see, oh, she's already been broken. She's already been groomed. She's already been abused. And so it made me like a target for them. So do you see when you're talking about the traffickers targeting individuals that they want to use force and fraud and coercion, are they going to look for maybe some of these signs? Or do they just put out 100 offers and they take what they can get? How does this work?
I think a little bit of both because I've done, investigations where I've written a warrant for, the time period that this victim described when they met this trafficker. And, just in that time period, not only are they conversing with that victim and trying to motivate and elevate that victim and give them their ism, which is, their game, basically, all the force, fraud, and coercion. But also, they are just casting a fishing line and reaching out to other people. And social media and the internet allows for this to happen. Especially when you have open profiles and you have parents who are not aware or educated on the apps that these kids are using. Traffickers, they don't have a normal job. Their only job is to manage the victims they have right now and get new ones. And so all day long, they have the time to invest in learning about these apps, learning how they can use them to benefit them, and reaching out to touch someone through the means of these social media apps.
We can't get away from technology. We're using it right now, and it's a tool for good when we use it for good. But it's important that we know that these traffickers are going to use the same tools that we use to try to raise awareness about their crimes, to commit those crimes. The same tools that we use to build our businesses and to reach out to the world to find customers and to find employees for our businesses. The traffickers are using those same exact tools to find, to target and groom potential victims and to advertise those victims and essentially to sell them to the buyers. So what kind of social media applications or what ways do you see the traffickers exploiting those applications and getting into those private conversations with the kids where they don't think that it's a stranger, they don't think that they're in danger, they think that this is somebody they can trust, they think this is their friend.
When we were growing up, our parents explaining to us, about the van or about the guy with the candy or the puppy or stranger danger. I think parents still have that conversation with their kids, but they don't expand on that to where the danger is now. And that's where we're talking about the social media and the internet and the games and all that. And I think parents need to realize that we've evolved. You still need to have that conversation because there is still a danger with strangers out there in person in public. But I think that parents need to realize more of the danger now is this means of anonymously contacting hundreds of people a day, just like business people do. This is a business with trafficking. And traffickers, I think, monitor and and then start engaging in the private messages of these kids because they see, just watching over a period of time, some of their vulnerability coming out in the posts or their videos or their stories or whatever they're posting. And they, like I said, have the time to sit around and watch and target those individuals who they think are expressing that vulnerability through their social media. And so That is how I'm seeing them do that. And it is also not limited to just your local area, because I have posing as a vulnerable person on the internet on social media apps had traffickers all the way from Orlando, Florida, past Arizona to Reno that were trying to recruit and groom me. So it wasn't just traffickers in Arizona. They will cast that net everywhere they can. And so that's another thing for parents to realize, that not only are they targeting, in your area, but it could be in another state, which makes it more concerning when they convince your child to run away from home. They will not even be in the same state anymore. And so looking for them is so much harder. So very important for these conversations to happen. And that's, part of this mission I'm on with my community awareness, is I keep telling parents and the audience, you have to have these conversations. The average age of entry into sex trafficking when I first started investigating this was 15. It is now 13. In my opinion, it's inching closer and closer to 12, 11 years old. And so we have to have these conversations, parents, but I never said how. And so that's what I wrote my book about, is the how to have the conversation. And it's a how-to guide. And I mirrored it off of how I would conduct an interview as a forensic interviewer with a victim, to build rapport, to, choose the right setting, to do a little bit of indirect confrontation, to give examples of, questions that they could ask. All of those things are in my book. I feel so bad as a law enforcement officer responding to a situation that's being reported that has already happened. And I feel that, we are lacking in the prevention side so that this situation never happens in the first place. And again, like I was calling to the community, I'm calling to parents to step up to the plate to do this prevention conversation. Do not think that the school is going to do it for you, or that someone else is going to do it for you. There is no one else. It is a job to do that as a parent in today's world. And so very important to do that. And so, yeah, for sure, my son playing games, I've caught him talking to strangers on games, and had to, issue punishment and take things away, and, really talk to him about the dangers of having conversations with people we don't know. And for him, I never found out, is it actually a peer, or was it a, 48-year-old man posing as a 12-year-old boy, that was talking to my son. So it's extremely dangerous, and parents need to really be paying attention to what's going on the games and on these apps, and what their kids are doing in the room next door, because the strangers are in the room next door with your kid.
It's so scary to think about. I think what might happen is sometimes parents just want to push it away. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to know too much about human trafficking because it's going to shatter their heart. And we'll put a link in the description below. I want people to be able to get a hold of you, get a hold of your resources, get these tools so that they can have these really crucial conversations with their kids and protect them from the targeting, from the grooming, from the trafficking. But let's talk about the other side of this coin, Heidi. Let's talk about the buyers. And I know you've done undercover investigations where you posed as a child and you were approached by traffickers and buyers. And I would like to really share with our audience the gravity of that situation, the reality. There are people out there who are monitoring social media, looking for a vulnerable person that they can engage with because they either want to sell that person or purchase that person.
Yeah, so we set up operations all the time, to chat with potential sex buyers, child predators, really. And it is where we're posing as a kid on, Friendly, or Moco Space, or there's so many more other apps. And I have a resource. So I know of many companies that, not only have parental controls, where it'll notify you as a parent that someone's trying to solicit an inappropriate image, or, even if your child is having a conversation with someone about suicide, those kind of things. Very important. These two companies, and there's many more, but the reason why I highlight these two is because they also do a lot of education to parents as well. Bark Technologies, like Bark Like a Dog, and Gab, Gabb, Gab Wireless, They have the parental controls, but they also even have devices that don't even have the internet at all. So it looks like a smartphone. Your child's not going to be bullied at school, and there's no opportunity for them to get on a game or download a secret app or have a conversation with a stranger on that device. And so that's very important for parents to know that. And then these two companies, like I said, have blogs where they invest time in doing the hard work for you as a parent right there. It's a resource for you to learn. If your child says, "Hey, mom, I want to download the Friendly app," you can go to Bark Technologies, look up the Friendly app, and see how easy it is for a predator to pursue a child on that app, or if Bark would recommend it or not. And then you would know, and you've done your homework, and you can now return to your child and explain to them why that's not a good idea to have that app and why they're not going to have that app on the phone that um, that you provided to them. So very important to continue that education, and it's a resource where you as the parent, I mean, we're putting a lot on you to have these conversations, to do all this new stuff. You don't even have to look into these apps. It's already been done for you. You just have to look to and know where to look for the information to make your decision, to protect your child from all the harm that happens with some of these apps. So that's the resource. But posing as a juvenile on these apps, and what I've been surprised about is how quickly um, the conversation moves to personal information, trying to figure out, well, what are your cross streets, or what part of town do you live in, or how old are your siblings, or are your parents at work right now? Personal information, and all those questions about personal information. And then it moves to, I really like you, and super complimentary things. And, you know, it's where they're testing the boundaries of the conversation to see if you're getting, if you're going down that path with them, as well as far as seeing if they, might ask you, well, have you ever kissed someone? And they're testing the boundaries of your responses. And it's very manipulative. Being on the other side and knowing exactly what they're doing is very manipulative, and it's super scary to know that that's happening with a kid. To know that these individuals are going down that path that I already see us going on. They think I'm 12 years old, and a real 12-year-old wouldn't know any of those things unless a parent told them about bad guys asking you for personal information, or bad guys asking you to tell them about your family, or where mom and dad work, or are they in the house right now. Bad guys asking them to speak in code with emojis, or be secretive, or delete the messages, or keep our conversation secret, or trying to trip, meaning move them to Snapchat where they feel more comfortable because conversations disappear. And if I get this kid to share images, they'll think it'll disappear. And those kind of things. And it's just scary to engage in that conversation and know exactly where we're going, to the point where they either send a harmful image, or they ask me to send a harmful image as a juvenile, or they ask to meet in real life. And so these conversations are happening in every minute of the day, unfortunately, everywhere, all over the world. And it's no longer a job of just law enforcement or the school. It's got to be parents getting involved. And it isn't where we can, like you said, put it off, or if I don't put it out in the atmosphere, it's not going to happen. It's already going to happen. And I call it, let's have our children self-police themselves so they recognize those things happening in the conversation. And then the other part of that is in your conversations, you tell them, if this happens, you're not in trouble. I want you to come talk to me and tell me about it. And so getting them to self-police and report to their parents what's happening is extremely important.
So when you're talking about these predators or potential predators, how long would you say it would take them to go from the initial engagement where they pop up in the DMs to sending that inappropriate criminal photograph of their private anatomy? Like, is this a days long or months long process, or could it all happen within 5 minutes?
Yeah, I've seen it happen in 2 minutes. I've seen it happen in 30 minutes. Longest probably was maybe 3 hours because they were at work and they were just, trying to pop in when they could. It's awful.
So they were at work. So these are normal, everyday men who are working jobs, going to the grocery store, standing in line at the bank, just like we do when we're out running errands or we have jobs that we're going to every day. We're dropping our kids off to school. We could be like driving past somebody who's literally texting a kid, trying to get that kid to meet them to do a sexual act. How do we protect our kids from that many bad guys?
Yeah. I think it's a multiple way to go about it. I mean, we need to hold these platforms accountable for allowing the opportunity to happen in the first place. And then we need to obviously educate, and then we need to really focus on the family unit and men teaching their sons that OnlyFans isn't acceptable, that that's not a normal thing, that the consumption of pornography is not a normal thing, because I truly believe there's a connection between, uh, you know, looking at and viewing pornography, that you become more excited and then want to carry it out. And then that's where you move into contacting an escort or contacting someone on OnlyFans or those kind of things, and doing carrying these acts out in real life. And I think that our allowing these platforms to be acceptable is what's causing this whole thing, because all these men wouldn't be buying people if they weren't, curious about what would happen in real life, and the exposure they're having comes from what they're viewing on pornography sites and on these apps.
Yeah, I think that there's some science behind that, and there are plenty of studies about the progression that happens when somebody starts consuming pornography. Now, there is a biblical basis as well. Whatever a man thinks in his heart, so he is. It's not that he is that when he thinks it in his heart, it's that he thinks it in his heart and then he goes out and makes it happen. When these buyers conceive in their minds that they would be willing to cross that line and commit that criminal act to go purchase another human being, be that a child or an adult who's been broken down and turned into a commodity, they're making a conscious choice to break the law. And they are dangerous, even if they're presenting as somebody that can be trusted, even if they're the president of a bank or they're a teacher at a school or a pastor of a church. Once they cross that line, now they're committing a criminal act, and you and your team can actually build a case to prosecute them and hold them accountable for those crimes. And I know you've gotten some rock star convictions. You've put some people away for a long time. So let's talk about that, because I think that it could really help them to craft strategic prayers, to know how to pray for law enforcement, for the jury, for the judge, for the case to be carried out, for the prosecutors. So let's talk a little bit about some of your wins.
As far as a prayer that we need is, I think, wisdom, because it can be overwhelming working human trafficking. And especially when you have, for example, Phoenix Police Department, we worked with 9 whole detectives for the fifth largest city in the United States. So we are not only just being undercover and trying to do proactive things, but we're also the investigators as well. And so prayers for wisdom, wisdom to, pursue these traffickers, pursue these buyers with all the tools and resources we have, and the time and manpower and resources to be able to do all of that. And then also, the urge or the wanting to, because I've experienced a lot of disappointment as well. I mean, I work really, really hard to get victims justice, and I've had several, don't want to play the game 2, 3, 5 years before this thing goes to trial or gets resolved, and they bow out and they change their mind about pressing charges, and then the whole thing goes away. And so that happening multiple times over and over again to a detective or an investigator really puts us down. Like, why are we even here? Why am I even doing anything? And so just prayers for them to keep going, keep wanting to get victims justice, and for these things to work out where we can actually have victims stick around and want to pursue pressing charges. Um, as far as a win, I mean, when I talk about one of the cases, this trafficker, I had arrested him in 2014 for trafficking a juvenile. And the situation happened where she turned 18 and disappeared. And so, unfortunately, at that time, I still knew about him. I knew he was pimping a juvenile, but she's gone. And so I have all these other traffickers that I'm pursuing, all these other undercover operations, all these other cases. Fast forward to 2019, we meet again, and this same trafficker gets stopped by patrol with a juvenile, and she was not cooperative. He was released because obviously, unless we don't know, we don't know, and unfortunately, he got released. And it took 5 months for her to come forward with information about what he had done to her. And that was also through the assistance of a survivor victim advocate that was working with her. So my whole case started 5 months late, but with the power of God, I found evidence. I dug into my prior contacts with this girl, with prior contacts that law enforcement has had with her, and found a phone that we took off of her in the month that she met him. And it had information on it that was helpful for the case. And I didn't even know law enforcement had it until we started backtracking and figuring out all the things. And all of that to say, this trafficker was charged with 11 counts of child sex trafficking. He also produced and possessed harmful images of her and video recordings. She described deleting those. And on that phone that I had impounded from 2017 were the deleted videos that she had described in the trash file in the forensic evidence retrieval of that data from that phone. So we were able to charge him with that. In that case, also, uh, it was where I had the wisdom to use my resources, and I contacted jail intelligence, and I befriended this jail intelligence officer who told me, hey, I'm listening to these phone calls, and it sounds like even though he's in custody, he's still running his game, and there's some adult females doing a house of prostitution. So then we started looking into that. And in that, we found that the location that they were in, the landlord was a victim of a robbery at a hotel by two traffickers and a 15-year-old. He's the victim. So then I look into that report. And that report, the robbery detective, who also needs wisdom, was listening to the girl and interviewing her, and she's identifying people, and he's showing her a lineup of the victim. And she's like, that's the guy who bought me for the night. But unfortunately, that went right over the head of that robbery detective and didn't realize his focus was the robbery. These three kids that robbed this man, this poor man. And he was actually a sex buyer. And I went to visit her in jail, juvenile jail, and found out the real story. And then we charged that landlord with child sex trafficking because he had, sex with that 15-year-old. So the wisdom to, uncover all of this, to pick up every rock, to pursue every lead is a lot of work. And a lot of detectives, they do their interview with their victim, they do warrants, they dump the phone, and they submit the case. They move on to the next one. And we need to not do that. We need to unturn every rock. Even in this case, because I had that experience with the same trafficker and that victim, the first victim taking off, instead of basing my entire case, even though I had a lot of evidence, only on the victim, I actually pursued him financially, and I charged him with money laundering and legal enterprise, house of prostitution, for his activity while in custody. And so, coinciding with the victim-based case, I went after him for a financial crimes case, which that was wisdom and experience that I have now. I wouldn't have done that back in 2014 when I first pursued him. And that is all to say that he was found guilty on all 11 counts, and he was sentenced to 108 years in prison.
Really, I think what our audience could learn from this and maybe craft some of that prayer strategy around is law enforcement is overworked under-resourced, underpaid, if I can say that, and you're expected to do everything with less, with even less than you need just to get by. So it's really hard to find those huge successes unless somebody is as innovative as you are and as creative as you are and as resilient as you are. So I'm so grateful that you are now training other undercover law enforcement and other detectives about human trafficking and how to build these cases. So that's a really valuable resource that you're providing to the law enforcement community. And that's a way that our audience here at the Dry Bones Army could be praying for their local law enforcement, that they would have the resources that they would need, that they would have the tools, that they would have the time, that they would have the stamina, that they would have the wisdom, that they would be able to network the way you were able to network and utilize those resources and be smart and savvy with the limited tools that you have available, because the buyers are saturating the marketplace with money because they're willing, like you said at the beginning of our conversation, the market is there for younger people to be targeted, groomed, and sold because the market is there, because people are willing to pay for a vulnerable child to be used as their sex slave. And that's the issue. There's money being made available to criminals who would be willing to sell a kid because there's buyers out there who want to pay for that.
Yeah, the money is the key. And I think that's, part of my other mission with law enforcement and training them. And I've spent, lots of time talking about undercover stuff and how to do these cases. And I'm a forensic interviewer and even interrogation. But I'm really focusing on training law enforcement right now on how to do these financial investigations on these traffickers, how to do the seizures of all their assets, because that's the other, dynamic that I wasn't doing before, and taking their stuff. So even if they don't get reformed in prison and they come back out again, they don't want to experience losing everything again to the police. And so taking them out at the knees, seizing their bank accounts, taking their Louis Vuitton, whatever red bottom shoes, all of
Mhm.
their expensive items, all of the proceeds of criminal gains, and seizing all of that is really what's going to teach them a lesson.
You're raising the risk in the marketplace so that it's no longer a low risk, high reward. Now it's a high risk.
I'm working on a couple of cases right now where the state of Arizona is the victim.
Mhm.
So it is where, if I can get a couple of those successfully, through, and I can then develop a training on that and show law enforcement, hey, this is another alternative that we can go down, and it elevates that risk, like you said, for these traffickers. Anything we can do to deter this activity and stop it is what we're trying to do for sure.
Amazing. I'm so excited about the work that you're doing. And then the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about the cases that you're building and some of your wins and successes is how helpful would it be if when somebody sees something, they do say something and they do report it to law enforcement? That might be the missing link that you need to bring these parties together in the same place at the same time. If you have a witness who calls a tip into law enforcement and says, I was in this hotel parking lot. This is what I witnessed. This is the license plate number. These are the descriptions of the individuals involved. I think it's important that the audience knows that they should never put themselves in a place of danger. They should never try to confront a trafficker. And really, I don't think that they should try to confront a trafficking victim or somebody that they think is a victim, because it puts them in danger. These traffickers have, this is a lot of money on the line. They're not going to take it lightly if you start interfering with their business.
Well, and that victim might get punished for it because they gave some vibe to this person who engaged with them, and the trafficker will punish them.
And the traffickers are watching, or they have people watching. It's a network, it's criminal, organized criminal activity. So they are all networked. So what can you tell our audience about ways that they can safely report and not only stress the importance of making those reports, but what, as a law enforcement agent, what's helpful for you to get in the file when the report is made? What are some things that people can look out for and pass on to law enforcement, and who should they call when they think that there's something going on?
Yeah. So if you've been to the airport, you know that there's the National Human Trafficking Hotline. You can call, you can text, but that's more for victims. Victims who, may want to get themselves out, in my opinion. That's not where you as a witness would report things. Because if you're wanting it to be investigated right away, like let's say you're witnessing it right now, well, that hotline is all the way in Washington, D.C. And they're going to take the information, and then tomorrow they might track down what agency, the information should go to. If it's something happening right now, always 911 is the way to go, especially if you witness an assault or you witness even a girl walking on the street that looks like she's 13. That's something to report now to 911. An example of when to call, a local hotline, like Arizona has our own state hotline that's managed by Arizona State University, and it's 24/7. They have like the backline phone number to all the human trafficking detectives. So it's a very seamless thing. You get the right people involved immediately, and it isn't where it's delayed in any way. And that's really critical. And I'm really glad that we have that, and that we've got all kinds of non-governmental organizations that are involved in making that resource available to the community and to assist law enforcement to get seamless information quickly, because these are very quick cases. Um, but basically, if you are in line at the convenience store or the gas station, and you see three girls of different ages and races with a male individual. They all have, dressed provocatively. They have the branding tattoo. I mean, that would be like a bingo, a Yahtzee, a blackjack, whatever your reference is to winner, winner, chicken dinner. You were in the right place at the right time and could make a difference. You could call that Arizona hotline. But as a good witness, law enforcement, I'm going to need you to describe the possible ages of these people, their race, their height, their physical, their approximate height, weight, anything you notice, like those tattoos, I need to know that. If they go to a vehicle, if you are able to capture the license plate, capture them on video on your phone. Everyone has a phone in their hand. I mean, don't be obvious about it, but if you can covertly record them and provide that. You don't, again, have to have a patrol car show up to your house. You can send that through email to law enforcement when you report, and ask for a phone call from the officer, not even showing up at the house. But that is what I would say as far as advice for that. If it is a situation happening right now, though, that is always going to be 911.
So 911, if we see what we think is human trafficking, or if our kid is in a conversation with somebody online that's inappropriate, that they're sending anatomy pictures or trying to get that kid to go away with them or not to trust their parents, like these are 911 instances. These are at the very least call in an anonymous tip to your local PD. These tips could be the nail in the coffin that helps you build your case against that trafficker.
Yeah. For example, I mean, I've had lots of traffickers claim they don't even know that person. And then you have a picture of them together. Or I go into that gas station and I get the video surveillance because you called in a tip that said, it was 2 days ago and it was about 10 o'clock at night. I saw this at this location. And I go get the video because you provided that information as a witness. And then I'm able to show the trafficker as a liar that they are, saying they don't even know this victim, but I've got them on video together. And that only happened because of a community member coming forward. Very important.
Also, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, if we're talking about a minor, they could have a case that goes beyond Phoenix. And this could be a national or even international case that they've been trying to put these pieces together. And that call in the Phoenix area or wherever somebody is to that local law enforcement could bring everything together with NCMEC and a child exploitation case. And so I just really want people to understand, while they're hearing from you that call it, you're not wasting the cops' time to call that tip in. It is valuable information.
Yeah, all of that helps for sure.
Well, I want to give you an opportunity for anything else that you think our audience needs to know.
I just want to leave you with the question that I get asked most often is what does a victim look like? In this one case that I want to close with a really happy ending, is the unfortunate trafficking of a 13-year-old by her uncle. So it's familial trafficking. But in this one case, and I talk about this case all the time, we have a situation where we have youth, we have adults, we have familial trafficking, we have individuals who entered the life of prostitution in their 40s. It isn't just one demographic. We have one girl that was 19 at college, mom's a nurse, no history of any sexual abuse or anything going on at home. And she fell into this situation with this trafficker. It isn't just the poor kids. It isn't just the kids in child welfare. It's not just, the bad part of town. It could happen anywhere. In this case, took 5 years to go to trial, but it came to an outcome of a record sentence of 493.5 years in jail and guilty on 101 counts out of 105. And so all of that only happens when you have community that comes together and that participates in that jury that I need to understand the dynamics of human trafficking, that this person is not free to leave, even though I might be testifying that they're freely walking down the side of the road with a phone in their hand. They're not able to call for help. They're not free to leave. And having juries who have enough awareness about human trafficking is what I pray for all the time, because I need informed juries to have the outcomes that I've had, and then other law enforcement to have those outcomes.
Can I just say thank you for your service? You have a big notch in your belt. If you put somebody away for almost 5 centuries, not 5 decades, I mean, that's a rock star conviction is 50 years, but you're talking about almost 5 centuries. So there is no chance that this bad guy is going to see the light of day and be able to interrupt polite society again because of the work you did, because of the support of your community. I'm so grateful for you saying yes to the call of God on your life. And people need to learn from you. They need to take advantage of your offer to learn from your book, talk to them, to learn from your website. And I know you offer webinars, you offer a lot of opportunities for people to engage with you at achanceforawareness.com. And you're also on social media, so people can follow you on Instagram, on other social media platforms, so that they can learn from you, because you do have a wealth of knowledge and experience that's going to help to educate the community.
It's trying to put a dent in this crime for sure.
From the bottom of my heart, as a survivor, I want to thank you for staying committed. I know that there's probably been a lot of times that you were tempted to give up. And I know that it's not all rock star 500-year sentences. There's been a lot of disappointments and a lot of discouragement. So thank you for continuing. And on behalf of survivors, on behalf of the vulnerable, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So yeah, make sure you check the show notes for these resources, the tools that Heidi is talking about. And so you can get a link to her book, you can get a link to her website, and you know how to get in touch with her and start following her on social media, because you're going to learn so much. You're going to be encouraged, and you're going to be able to protect your kids.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, what did y'all think of Heidi Chance? Is she not an incredible and beautiful sister in Christ? She gave us so many things to pray about. She gave us so many things to think about, and some strategies, not only to pray, but also to talk to the kids that we care about, so that we can help to protect them from becoming victims of traffickers and the bad people who are out there that are seeking to exploit the vulnerable. So make sure you go to achanceforawareness.com. Make sure you get her book. Talk to them. Don't just get the book, read the book, and then do what the book says and put it into practice in your home. Talk to the moms in your mom groups about that book. bring it to Bible study, talk to people about Heidi's work and let them know to listen to this podcast so that they can learn more about her, the experience that she had in law enforcement, and the ways that you can make a difference using her experience and her expertise to protect the kids that you care about. And the Dry Bones Army is here for you. If you're a prayer partner, if you're an intercessor who wants to pray for an end to human trafficking and you're not signed up yet, go to thedrybonesarmy.com, get signed up, and also visit authorsandystorm.com. It's being migrated to survivorsandystorm.com. You can get my books, the Navi series there. The sales of those books is how we pay for this podcast to be put on. So get the Navi series, and then you can see what a victim looks like, because that's a behind the scenes look at my story of survival as a victim of human trafficking, starting at just 6 years old, and what it was like to be a victim of human trafficking for 20 years. I took a lot of care writing those stories to guard your heart as the reader, so you see the truth, but it's not going to shatter you. It's going to motivate you to do everything you can to protect the kids you love. So make sure to visit survivorsandystorm.com, get those books, go to Heidi's website at achanceforawareness.com, get the resources that she's made available, and pray for an end to human trafficking. Dry Bones Army, you are making a difference. You are doing important work in this world. Don't grow weary in doing good. Keep up the fight. I'll see you next month, the second Tuesday of the month, for our next episode of the Dry Bones Army podcast. And until then, God bless you and have an amazing day.